Hello everyone, I'm Selena. I think the purpose of the test is to draw public's attention to educational inequality in urban school, then find possible efficient ways to solve related problems. Urban education is a total new concept to me because I do not have any real-life experience about it. I know segregation is not new in American history, especially before civil rights in 1960s. In the readings, education connects to segregation. It makes me want to know more about it. From my understanding, it seems wealth gap is the leading reason of the problem. Parents who make less income must send their children to school. Lack of resources because they usually live in poor neighborhood. As part of school funding comes from property taxes. In the district, the place where students live directly determines what kind of education they will receive. As mentioned in the reading, according to the research, in about half of the largest 100 cities, most African American and Latino students attend schools where at least 75% of all students qualify as poor or low income on the federal guidelines, and the students of color make up most of the public school. They are isolated with their classmates who also from low-income family. Both articles show us the reality of segregation in urban school. The urban schooling explains it in a more theoretical ways by using previous researchers' results, while the concentration of poverty in American schools use lots of data to convince readers. I think numbers is more convincing to me. Like I mentioned earlier, in the concentration of poverty in American schools, the author used the attendance of public school from the largest 100 cities in the state. The results showed in 50 cities, at least 75% of all students qualify as poor or low income and federal guidelines. I have no school, although I have no school experience before high school here in America, and then one belief I always have is that all have equal education rights. I do have a friend who shared his experience with me on this. He's in his early 20s. He was born and grew up in New York. When he was at school, his observation on race ratio based on his school experience is around white students 7 versus African American students 2 and other minority students 1. I think he may be an exception to this. Anyway, it's still surprising to get to know more about public education here, especially when it's linked to race, culture, government's policy, economic, social status, and so forth. I think the test just brings the negative side of public education to the light. Of course, it's it's challenging the power imbalance to some extent. I assume most people who grow up here must have that experience. To me, I only thought that the rich will go to private school while the poor have no choice. Most of them just go to public school in the place where I come from. Obviously, this is not the case here. Education is more complicated in here. Segregation always exists in different ways. Now that I know this, I'd like to see this change education policymakers' idea on how they make any future plan in public school.